So jumping back into RLA reading, we did some RLA language arts yesterday, some grammar mechanics. So today back to reading comprehension and reasoning. So still working with fictional works, literary works. And along the way, we've talked about, you sort of analyze them a little bit differently than you do nonfiction. You're looking for different things, obviously. You're not using literary works necessarily for evidence, depending on how you're writing or what you're reading. But there's still analysis that needs to be done. And there are things that sort of overlap, but you're trying to often identify different things. So our last lesson, when we talked about themes and details, different kind of type of detail, things that support the theme rather than necessarily a main idea. Those things are interlinked, right? Main ideas sort of and supporting details come along with nonfiction. Theme and details are more about literary works and fiction. So looking at character traits, feelings, and motivations today. So when we have characters in a book, right, they react to situations in a certain way. They express certain emotions, and they have particular reasons for the things that they do. So those are things that you will need to analyze, and certainly things that you'll see on the GED exam. They will ask you questions about, what is this character feeling, or why did this character act this way, things like that. And we'll get a sample of some of those questions in our lesson today. So let's open it up here and take a look. Take time today. There we go.
Hey dude, let's do the lesson on character traits, feelings, and motivation. People in the story, the characters. This lesson will help you understand traits, feelings, and motives of characters.
So part of a good story is having good characters. You could have, a narrator that has this great epic story, but if the characters are kind of flat, they don't emote, right? They don't express emotion, or it's hard to read them, figuratively, right? To understand their emotions and their motivations, why they act the way they do, what they're feeling, what's inside their head, things like that. It makes for a much less interesting read. It makes for less interesting, it gets kind of boring. And your characters will be quite different within a book. So let's take a look here.
I really like stories. I mean, I love movies and TV. And now that I'm reading more, I'm getting into short stories and novels too. You never know what cool thing you'll read. Curtis turned me on to this book called Anthem. It's a pretty cool story, exactly the same. It doesn't matter what you're good at doing or what you want to do. You have to do what their government tells you to do. So this one smart guy gets all rebellious and stuff and escapes the society. It got me thinking. This guy is smart, but he thinks about it like a sin. He doesn't want to be smart, but he can't help thinking about things. He wants to be just like everyone else, because that's what the whole world wants. I guess I kind of relate to that. Sometimes, maybe, I'm smarter than I let on, because it's easier if no one expects too much from you. I liked reading about this guy in Anthem. Characters are the most interesting thing about reading. That's what really makes a story, What are the people like? What do they want? I just like people, so when I read, I like to think about the characters. Here, let me show you how I think about it.
All right, let's take a look. Oh, yeah, he's finished.
One of the things that helps you in something.
What just happened? Oh, hold on a second here. Here, let me start.
Describes you. So really, you want to describe the character. One of the things that helps you understand characters is traits. A trait is something that describes you. So it's a character like John McClane from Die Hard. Maybe I describe him as hardworking New York cop. And yeah, those are traits. But the obvious things aren't really the most interesting ones. You want to get to know him, right? What's he like? If you want to know what a character is like, look at what the character says and does. Like John McClane goes the whole film with his feet all messed up because he doesn't have any shoes. But he still uses his feet to break a window so he can get out of danger, huh? So cool. My point is, he's persistent. He keeps at things, even though everything is going against him. And he's brave because you've got to be brave to break a window with your torn up bare feet, huh? So, do you see what I did? You want to look at what the character does and says. Then ask, so if a character does this or says that, what are they like? What words can you use to describe them? I bet you can describe a character's traits pretty well if you try.
Yeah, so that's really dictates, like as I say, character traits. We as people have different character traits ourselves. There's things that sort of that if somebody was to describe you as far as your personality and things, right? There's going to be certain traits that you have that others don't, and you share with other people. So and those actions that we read about a character undertaking is going to help develop those traits. Sometimes they actually tell you about them, or in other cases, you have to look at their actions or their reactions to things to see, sort of establish that. So we are looking at.
Okay, take a look at this passage. It's part of that book Anthem that I was telling you about. Pay attention to the things the character says. What trait would you say describes the narrator?
Okay. So again, from Anthem, and this might be the same piece we've read before, but let's take a look here. So the main character has run away from his society, where all people are supposed to be the same. Everyone is meant to use the word we. The word I is forbidden and forgotten. The character has just learned the word I. It was when I read the first of the books I found in my house that I saw the word I. And when I understood this word, the book fell from my hands and I wept. I, who had never known tears, I wept in deliverance and in pity for all mankind. I understood the blessed thing which I had called my curse. I understood why the best in me had been my sins and my transgressions, and why I had never felt guilt in my sins. I understood that centuries of chains and lashes will not kill the spirit of man, nor the sense of truth within him. I read many books for many days. Then I called the Gold One, and I told her what I had read and what I had learned. She looked at me, and the first words she spoke were, I love you. Then I said, my dearest one, it is not proper for men to be without names. There was a time when each man had a name of his own to distinguish him from all other men. So let us choose our names. I have read of a man who lived many thousands of years ago, and of all the names in these books, his is the one I wish to bear. He took the light of the gods and he brought it to men, and he taught men to be gods. And he suffered for his deeds as all bearers of light must suffer. His name was Prometheus. It shall be your name, said the Golden One. And I have read of a goddess, I said, who was the mother of the earth and of all the gods. Her name was Gaia. Let this be your name, my Golden One, for you are to be the mother of a new kind of gods. It shall be my name, said the Golden One. Now I look ahead. My future is clear before me. The saint of the pyre had seen the future when he chose me as his heir, as the heir of all the saints and all the martyrs who came before him and who died for the same cause, for the same word. No matter what name they gave to their cause and their truth. I shall live here in my own house. I shall take my food from the earth by the toil of my own hands. I shall learn many secrets from my books. Through the years ahead, I shall rebuild the achievements of the past and open the way to carry them further. The achievements which are open to me, but closed forever to my brothers, for their minds are shackled to the weakest and dullest ones among them. I have learned that my power of the sky was known to men long ago. They called it electricity. It was the power that moved their greatest inventions. It lit this house with light, which came from those globes of glass in the walls. I have found the engine which produced this light. I shall learn how to repair it and how to make it work again. I shall learn how to use the wires which carry this power. Then I shall build a barrier of wires around my home and across the paths which lead to my home. A barrier light as a cobweb, more impassable than a wall of granite. A barrier my brothers will never be able to cross, for they have nothing to fight me with. Save the brute force of their numbers. I have my mind. Okay, so that's from Anne. I never remember how to pronounce her name. It's Ayn Rand or Anne Rand. She was writer through the 20th century. I think her most famous work is Atlas Shrugged. And she often wrote, I think she was Soviet born, as a matter of fact, and she wrote a lot. The underlying message here is sort of an anti-communist, anti-socialist message that was always sort of in her writing. You can see where that's coming from, right? That there's this kind of same idea in Atlas Shrugged, but you have this sort of collective society where everybody has lost their personal identity. And a lot of conservatives always like to reference her work and are big fans of her work because they're very fearful that any type of sort of left-leaning sort of democratic idea is getting us towards this sort of idea of socialism and communism. So they're all real big fans of Ayn Rand. Anyway, yeah. So what trait best describes our narrator? Proud, right? He's very proud of the fact that he has discovered this word that is separated from the others, and he's going to, there's going to be a sort of revolution where this individualism will come back, and he's named himself. So certainly we see that more so than dishonesty or stupid or cold or without emotion. He's certainly proud of that. I also want to mention here, when we talk about point of view and narrative and voice or person, this is written in the first person, right? The narrator is the one who is in the action. They are explaining his action. So of course we see the pronoun I being first person. So yes, he is proud.
Great job! The character names himself Prometheus, a Greek god who brought fire to people. He plans to rebuild the past and learn on his own from his books. That sounds like a proud person.
All right.
Now let's talk about characters' feelings and motivations. What do they want? Are they happy or sad? Are they in love? Why do they do the things they do? You can find out about feelings and motivations the same way as traits. What do the characters do in scenes? Now, John McClane in Die Hard. One time, he's in an air vent trying to escape being shot, and he says, "Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs." Like he's repeating the invitation to come out to California. And now he's stuck in a vent. Huh? It's not exactly a lot of laughs, so he's being sarcastic. It shows how he feels annoyed. I'd be annoyed too if my Christmas was ruined by a bunch of thieves. That's an example of how the character feels. Then there's motivation. That's what the character wants, or why they do things, face to face. So cool. Hans looks up, and what does he see? John McClane's gun in his face. So the first thing that Hans does is, "Son of them, aren't you? Don't kill me." Why does he do that? He's pretending to be an innocent victim, so McClane won't hurt him, and so he can find out more info until he gets the upper hand. Just ask yourself, what does the character want? Why does the feelings and motivations? What do you think?
Right. Yeah. So what's motivating that character? And that's going to be dependent on there's sort of overall motivations for the entire story. Each segment, they may be motivated by something else. And along with that, their feelings. And their feelings are going to help inform you about what their motivations are. So let's take a look.
Okay, this is the same passage from Anthem again. When the narrator learns the word I, why does he cry?
Right. So why does he cry when he understands this word I? So he is happy, right? This is a happy cry. So it is something that explains much to him. This is opening up a new world to him. So he's feeling very passionate about it. And that's crying out of joy.
Great job. The character feels happy that he was delivered or saved because now he understands so much about his experience. He knows why he didn't ever feel guilty, for example.
Right. So that's something else, explanation there is this person feels differently as he has grown up, that he doesn't feel part of the sort of collective, identity. There's something that has separated him, but he hasn't been able to figure out what that is. Right. And then he discovers that, there's idea of individualism through the simple word I. Right? We describe ourselves, just one individual, one person, me. And when he discovers this word and he understands that, there's this whole history of individualism before, what he knows today, that, overwhelms him, because that explains, why he felt that way he did. He's still an individual. He hasn't sort of conformed to this other idea because he still has somehow maintained his individuality. And now he has an explanation of why he feels that way. And
Cool. Nice job working on those exercises. Are you ready to? There are 8 questions to try out.
Yeah, we don't
Hey,
have
I'll
to
tell you
worry
what.
about that. So yeah, let's go ahead. There's a couple big passages there, so let's take about 15 minutes to answer the questions on your own. And of course, if you need anything question-wise, let me know. I'm right here for you. And I will pause the record, resume our recording. Sort of the theme and the idea and the plot behind it. So our first passage was from Philip K. Dick. It was, again, one that we've seen before. Was talking about the cuckoo clock. Apparently Larry is, I can't remember the woman's name now, but he gives his wife apparently a cuckoo clock, and it reminded her of one that she knew as a child. I think it was her grandmother who had one. Let me look at that real quick. Doris's, and like her mother had. Yeah. So, and she's very enamored by it. She really, really likes the gift. But we get a character trait exposed here about Larry. So, what can we say about Larry? Is that he's kind of thoughtless, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because while he gets her this gift, which seems generous, who wants to get a gift and be told it's like, yeah, well, I got it because it was on sale, right? That really takes it out. Even if it's something that's really thoughtful, that's something he really wants, and you're thinking about him as you're picking it up. If you tell him it's like, yeah, well, it was really cheap, so I got it for you. That really kind of doesn't set right with people. You want to think that you're worth something to them, and it just, Larry is just sort of doesn't read the room well, and just kind of blurts that out. That it's like, yeah, it was cheap, that's why I got it. So that really, takes away from this very special sort of gift. Otherwise, because Doris doesn't really care about how much she paid for it. She's really happy to get it, but when he says that, it just kind of, it upsets her, as you'd expect, right? If somebody said that to you, you're like, wow, gee, thanks, I guess. So how does Doris feel when she first opens the gift? So yeah, she's delighted, right? And how do we tell that, right? So she's already kind of excited because she's getting a present, right? And we see the exclamation point, and we talk about punctuation, right? If you use the exclamation point, that means it's really emphasizing whatever's being said, right? They're either screaming or it's a big emphasis. So we get a cuckoo clock, and they say Doris cried. A real old cuckoo clock like my mother had. She turned the clock over and over, so examining it and looking at the details, just like my mother had. So right away, and that last line, her eyes sparkled with tears. So they're tears of joy, right? Because she's received this present. And then later we also because she runs upstairs and she's still looking at it. And things get a little weird because she seems to be creating this relationship between her and the cuckoo bird inside the clock. So she's certainly delighted. And then why does Doris run out of the room? So she is upset, right? Because Larry and his thoughtlessness has said something that's like, man, why don't you just leave it? Why'd you have to make it weird? So she's upset at Larry for just being, kind of a jerk about it. Okay. And we'll keep going here.
Good job. You got 3 in a row correct.
Okay, still with Doris. So based on the passage, which character trait best describes Doris? So she's pretty emotional, right? She tears up when she gets the cuckoo clock. It reminds her of her mother. Her interaction with it later, all of that is showing her to be an emotional person. That is certainly a character trait you could very easily assign to her, whereas her husband, Larry, is a bit thoughtless. And those other ones, no information really in the passage that would indicate that. So a new passage here. It's some more science fiction oriented stuff, and this is by Isaac Asimov. And Slim and Red have seemed to discovered a spaceship, perhaps that one of their fathers is investigating. Mentioning this just offhand, just a little bit of trivia. Isaac Asimov, who is also a very, very famous, mostly science fiction writer. That's what he's known for. Did a lot of stuff with like robots and artificial intelligence and stuff. I, Robot, the Will Smith movie, that's based on his book. But he's published. So if you're familiar with the Dewey Decimal System, right, in your library, every 100 numbers in the Dewey Decimal System is a different category, right? So I think, I don't remember them offhand, but 800 or 900 is like geography and history, and 800 is literature, and 700 is like recreational and sports, and 600 is math. Whatever it is, that there's like it changes every 100 numbers to a new category, and then there's little subcategories under that, and that's how libraries are typically arranged. Isaac Asimov is published in every category of the Dewey Decimal System except for 100, which is philosophy and psychology, I believe. So and no other author has published in that many different categories within the Dewey Decimal System. So he's written actual science, and he has written things about computers and all the other areas of the Dewey Decimal System. History, he's even written. So he's very prolific writer, was very, very well known. But anyway, back to our lesson here. So based on the passage, which character is more curious? So it turns out it's Slim, and that's pretty obvious early on in the passage. Red said, "Holy smokes, look at that. It's all shiny silver or something." But it was Slim who was really excited. He caught at the other. "I know what it is. It's a spaceship. That must be why my father came here." So, the narrator, the author, is telling us that Slim is more excited, right? So he's more curious about it than Red. Red and Slim, those are some names. Okay, and then how does Red feel when Slim starts to go towards his father and the spaceship? So he's pretty scared. He doesn't want anybody to find out that they're there. And but Slim's wants to go talk to him. So he doesn't want to be found. So he's kind of afraid. He doesn't want to be seen. Yep. And so how does Red feel when he says, "I take it back then"? So let's actually find that. What's that? Okay, here it is. So just reading a little before and after. I don't care. Let's see. Maybe we go back up here. Red said, hey, you don't want them to see us. We're not supposed to be here. Do you want them to start asking questions and find out about our animals? I don't care. You said I was crazy. Snitcher, you promised you wouldn't tell. I'm not going to tell, but if they find out themselves, it's your fault for starting an argument and saying I was crazy. And I take it back then, grumbled Red. Well, all right, you better. So responding to him, Red calling Slim crazy. So he's annoyed because he's kind of started this argument and he's sort of upset Slim. So, right, Red grumbles when he takes back his insult. To grumble means to complain. So he's annoyed, maybe not necessarily sorry. He's just sort of placating, just sort of trying to ease Slim's emotions there by saying it. And then why does Slim try to go see his father? Because he wants to see the spaceship, right? That's where his father is. And he's curious about, this, what appears to be a spaceship. So he wants to go check it out. And that was pretty straightforward. All right.
So what do you think about characters in stories? If you're like me, the people in stories are totally the best part. I like it when I can relate to someone, even if I'm not completely like them. Remember, when you think about characters, look at the things they say and the things they do. That'll tell you what the character is like, how they feel, and why they do things, traits, feelings, and motivations.
Well, he was much more subdued today. Dwayne's usually real high energy. He was a little different. But anyway, and also, how the author describes them. So not just the things they do or say, but how they react. So just like Red, when he grumbles, then you could tell he's annoyed. So it's all about sort of, again, just sort of like how we make inferences in nonfiction and reading between the lines, you sort of draw conclusions and make inferences about the characters based on the way they react to situations, the things that they say, faces they make and things like that. It all depends on how the author describes them in those situations. So any questions on character traits, feelings, and emotions? All right. So yeah, that's the end for today. Tomorrow we'll jump back in and do a little more language arts, grammar, and mechanics. And a little more history as well. So I will see you guys tomorrow, 12:15 for social studies. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.